trapped on an abandoned ship, alien Empress in my arms when I woke up. The storm outside rattled the lone traveler, but the silence inside the abandoned ship was even worse. Space was quiet, too quiet. But this ship was a forgotten thing, drifting, lifeless, and long overdue for death. Yet somehow there was something strange about it, a hum beneath the metal skin, a warmth in the air that didn't belong, like an old house that had been left too long with the lights still on. He had boarded it for one reason only: shelter. The solar storm had torn through the skies like a hungry beast, and his suit's battery was low, leaving him stranded in the midst of the storm with nothing but his instincts. He wasn't looking for adventure, wasn't hoping for a mystery to unravel. All he wanted was a place to sleep. The ship had been derelict for years, the kind of place you'd find after months or even decades of drifting through space, abandoned by its crew, slowly decaying in the vacuum. Old, quiet, and cold. That was how abandoned ships should feel. The traveler had learned that much from years of wandering space. But this one was different. The air inside the ship didn't smell like the usual damp metal and stale air. No, this one had a faint scent, dust, ozone, and something almost floral. He could feel it in the back of his mind, trying to make space feel warm, polite even, as if someone had once cared enough to make it feel like a home. But that wasn't possible. Not here. Not in a ship this old, this abandoned. He didn't care. He dropped to the floor, folding his jacket into a makeshift pillow and lying between two collapsed cargo crates. The ship groaned around him, the way any tired thing would when it was pushed too far. The ship's lights were long dead, and the ceiling was lost in shadow. All he could hear was the occasional creak and sigh of a vessel that had stopped trying. But as his mind fought against the pull of sleep, something didn't sit right. The ship didn't feel as lifeless as it should. It wasn't just the warmth in the air. It was the subtle hum, like something inside was waking up. But it couldn't be. The power had been shut off for years. He couldn't explain it, but it didn't matter. He was exhausted. Sleep took him before he could think much more about it. When he woke, he immediately knew something was wrong. His first instinct was that the ship had collapsed on him, crushing him under its weight. But when he tried to move, he found that something was different. There was warmth beside him, and his breath hitched in his chest. It wasn't just the warm air of the ship, it was a living warmth. He could feel the press of it against his body, the soft rise and fall of breath in the air. He froze. Someone was there. His eyes snapped open, and for a moment he thought he might be imagining it. The heat of panic surged through him. Had he died? Was this some strange dream? The ship should have been empty, dead in the cold vacuum of space. But there, in his arms, a woman lay asleep, her head nestled beneath his chin, her soft breath warming his skin. He looked down, heart pounding. The woman was beautiful, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that she didn't belong here. Her skin was pale, smooth, human, yes, but then there were her ears, long, elegant, tapering back through her hair. They twitched once like some delicate antenna, picking up the world around her. And with that small movement, his heart skipped a beat. She wasn't human. The traveler felt his breath catch in his throat. What in the galaxy was going on? His mind raced. Hallucination? A dream induced by his battered body and lack of sleep? But no, this was real. She was real. He could feel the steady beat of her heart, the warmth of her body pressed against him. He didn't know what to do. Every instinct screamed at him to pull away, to jump to his feet, to run. But his body didn't respond. His arm, almost by reflex, was still around her. He couldn't move. She stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. Her gaze met his, dark and intense, but not panicked, just calm, almost too calm. They locked eyes for a long, silent moment. The traveler's mind scrambled for something to say, some way to explain this, to break the silence, but all that came out was a whispered, breathless, "Hi." The woman didn't pull away. She didn't seem startled, just curious.
Her gaze shifted to his arm around her, then back to his face. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if appraising him. She raised one eyebrow. Her ears twitched just the slightest movement. "You are very calm," she said, her voice low and smooth, accented in a way she didn't quite understand, but still made her shiver. "I'm pretending. It's going great so far." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of her mouth lifted in what could only be described as a near smile. The warmth of it caught him off guard. It wasn't just the smile. It was the fact that she wasn't pulling away, not recoiling from him. She was accepting this strange situation, like it was just another normal day in the galaxy. The ship hummed again, almost as if it too was amused by the situation. The traveler couldn't shake the feeling that everything about this moment was wrong, and yet, at the same time, it felt almost comforting. For the first time in what felt like ages, he wasn't alone. Her eyes flicked around the ship, scanning the panels, the walls, the faint flicker of the systems coming back to life. The panels above them were pulsing, weak symbols crawling across them in a language the traveler didn't understand. "This vessel recognizes me," she said, her voice flat, but with a note of something ancient and resigned. The traveler blinked, still trying to process everything. The ship never reacted like this. It shouldn't be alive. It was dead, rusted, abandoned. And yet here they were, in the middle of nowhere, and the ship was waking up as if it had been waiting for her. And in that moment, the traveler knew something had shifted. Whatever had been abandoned here, whatever had been forgotten, was about to become very real. And the universe, strange, unpredictable, and wild as it was, had just thrown him into the heart of it. The Empress had returned, and the war was only just beginning.
The Empress didn't respond immediately. She looked down at the console, her fingers brushing the surface again. The ship seemed to pulse with energy, and for the first time, the traveler noticed something else, something more unsettling than the ship's hum. The glow beneath her skin, faint but undeniable, had intensified, matching the rhythm of the ship's heartbeat. "I never wanted to fight," she said softly, almost to herself. "But sometimes the fight is all that's left. You can't run from it, not forever." The traveler stared at her, his mind racing. He didn't know what to believe anymore. The ship, the alien woman, the war she spoke of, it all felt like a dream, a nightmare unfolding before his eyes. But as the Empress turned away, her hand pressed against the wall, something changed in the air. The ship seemed to respond to her touch, the energy shifting, as if preparing for something. "I've run long enough," she continued, her voice hardening, "and now the galaxy will come for me. They won't forget me, not now." The traveler stepped back, unsure of how to process what was happening. "What are you going to do?" Her gaze locked onto his, a glint of something dangerous flashing in her eyes. "I will finish what I started. The galaxy must understand that I will not be a pawn anymore. I will take control, even if it means the end of everything." Her words carried a weight that the traveler couldn't ignore. There was no hesitation in her tone, no doubt. The Empress was ready to face whatever was coming, ready to return to the war she had once fled. But this time, she wasn't going to run. The ship, once dormant and lifeless, now thrummed with an energy that seemed to come from the very core of the universe. It was more than just a vessel. It was a weapon. It was a reminder of the power that had once been hers. And now, as the systems powered up around them, it seemed to come alive for the first time in years, as if waiting for its true master to claim it once again. The traveler felt a sense of foreboding as he looked around the ship, the energy building in the air. He had come aboard seeking shelter, expecting nothing more than a night's rest in the cold, empty depths of space. But now he realized that he had become part of something much larger than himself. The Empress was no longer just a ruler of a forgotten empire. She was a force of destiny, and the war she had left behind was about to consume everything in its path once again. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would the traveler. The gathering storm. The quiet that followed was suffocating, pressing in from all sides like the calm before a storm. The ship, once a hollow, forgotten shell, now pulsed with life, each beat of its heart matching the growing tension between the traveler and the Empress. The hum of its systems had become a steady rhythm, almost like breathing, alive, deliberate, waiting for the next command. But it wasn't just the ship that had come alive. Outside, across the vast expanse of space, something else was shifting. He could feel it. The traveler had been in enough battles, witnessed enough power plays, to know when the universe itself was bracing for something. And this felt like the beginning of a war, one that had been waiting for a long time to be ignited. "Do you feel that?" the traveler asked, his voice low, unsure if he was even speaking to her or just to himself. The Empress didn't answer immediately. She was standing by the viewport now, her back straight, her gaze fixed on the endless void outside. He could see the faint glow beneath her skin pulsing, steady and calm, like the ship's heartbeat. There was something otherworldly about her, a quiet power that seemed to radiate from her very presence. "They're coming," she said, almost to herself. Her words felt like a prophecy, an inevitability. The traveler shifted uncomfortably, his mind racing. The entire ship felt like it was holding its breath, as if it too was aware of the ships approaching, the fleets gathering in the dark corners of the galaxy. He didn't need to ask who they were. The way the Empress spoke made it clear that the galaxy wasn't just a distant, abstract place. It was about to become a battlefield, and he, by some twisted fate, was in the middle of it. Outside, the stars seemed to flicker, dimming as shadows grew larger and closer. The quiet of space was being disturbed, the calm of the void interrupted by the inevitable. The traveler felt a cold rush of fear. He had come here to escape, to survive the storm outside. He never intended to be part of whatever this was. But now he understood that fate had its own plans. It had pulled him into the orbit of something far bigger than himself. A distant flash of light caught his attention. A ship? A fleet? He couldn't tell. The ship's sensors had begun to hum louder, detecting the approaching forces, scanning the blackness outside. On the console, symbols began to shift again, and a holographic map blinked to life. It showed distant fleets, their positions marked with glowing markers, drawing closer with each passing second. The Empress's eyes narrowed as she studied the data. Her fingers hovered over the controls, a slight hesitation in her movement, as though she was deciding whether to act or wait. The traveler could feel the weight of the decision she was making, the pressure mounting with each passing second. "They'll come in waves," she said, finally, her voice calm but with an edge of finality. "They always do." The traveler felt a lump in his throat. He had no idea who these fleets were, what they represented, but from the way she spoke, from the way the ship responded to her presence, he understood that they weren't just after the Empress, they were after the war she had started, and now it was coming full circle. "Why now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Empress turned to face him then, her eyes intense. "Because," she said softly, "the galaxy has forgotten its own history, and now they remember. They remember who I am, what I was, what I did." Her words cut through the air like a blade. The traveler didn't know what to say. The Empress wasn't just a ruler. She was a key to something ancient, something buried deep in the galaxy's past, a past that had been sealed away and forgotten. But now, that history was coming back to haunt them all. "I didn't want this," she continued, her voice tinged with regret.
But the war doesn't wait for you to be ready. It never does. The traveler stepped closer, his heart racing. So what happens now? Do we fight? Do you fight? The Empress's gaze softened for a brief moment, a flicker of vulnerability passing through her eyes. I have no choice, she said, her voice quiet but resolute. The ship's hum grew louder, more urgent. The panels around them began to glow brighter, the systems pushing into overdrive as the first fleet appeared on the sensors. The traveler could feel the change in the air, the weight of the moment settling over him. The ships were coming, not just as invaders, but as reminders of a past long buried. As the fleet drew closer, the ship seemed to brace itself. The traveler looked at the Empress, the weight of her past and her destiny settling between them. She was no longer the woman who had fled her empire. She was the Empress who would return to face the consequences of her choices. The war was no longer a thing of the past. It was here, and the galaxy was about to change. The traveler had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was certain. He was no longer just a bystander. The galaxy was watching, and whether he wanted to or not, he had become part of the story. The Empress's choice. The ship seemed to hold its breath, as if the very walls were waiting for a command, for something to happen. The traveler stood in the center of the room, his eyes fixed on the Empress, who remained still, staring out into the growing darkness of space. The distant fleets on the holographic map were no longer just markers. They were real. They were coming for her. The ship thrummed beneath his feet, resonating with a deep, almost mournful force. The traveler could feel it now, the energy in the air, thick and charged. It wasn't just a ship. It was a living thing, a vessel bound to the Empress by something far older than either of them. He wasn't sure what it was, but he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was watching. The Empress didn't speak at first. She didn't need to. The weight of what was coming was suffocating, a storm in the making. Her eyes, always sharp and calculating, softened for a moment as she glanced at the traveler. There was something else there now, a flicker of something fragile, something that spoke of the burden she carried. "You're not ready," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. He frowned, confused. "What do you mean? You've been talking about the war, about what's coming. What are we waiting for?" Her gaze hardened again. She turned away from the viewport and walked toward the center.